Most teams don't fail because they lack process. They fail because they trust process more than reality. That sounds harsh, but if you've worked in any modern organization, you've seen it. We build layers. Then we build layers on top of those layers. Templates, scoring systems, refinement rituals, definitions of ready, definitions of done. And at some point, we stop asking the only question that actually matters. Does this work for a real human being? Not in theory, not in a meeting, not in a document, in reality. Because reality is where all of this gets tested. And reality does not care how well organized your backlog is. It only cares whether someone can use what you built. A product backlog item is supposed to represent value, something useful, something testable. But in practice, it often becomes something else. It becomes a container, a place where we store assumptions. We take uncertainty and we wrap it in structure. We write it down. We estimate it. We add acceptance criteria, and suddenly it feels real. It feels understood, but nothing has actually been proven. Acceptance criteria are a perfect example. At their best, they create clarity. They help teams align. They make expectations visible. But at their worst, they create the illusion of certainty. We write detailed conditions for behavior no one has ever observed. We describe interactions that have never actually happened. We define edge cases for users we have never met. And then we convince ourselves that because we wrote it down, we understand it. But writing is not understanding. Structure is not truth. And process is not reality. Now, this does not mean process is useless. That's the mistake people make when they hear this. They swing to the other extreme. No process, just build. That fails too. Because without structure, you get chaos instead of clarity. So the goal is not to remove process. The goal is to put it in its place. Process is a tool, not a source of truth. Reality is the source of truth. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Reality is unpredictable. Users behave in ways you did not expect. They misunderstand things that seem obvious. They ignore features you thought were critical. They struggle with things you thought were simple. And no amount of documentation can fully prepare you for that. So organizations make a trade. They choose process over reality because process feels controllable. You can measure it. You can standardize it. You can improve it on paper. Reality, you cannot control. So instead of facing that uncertainty, we build systems that make us feel certain, even when we're not. And that has a cost. We build things that make perfect sense inside the system we created, but fail the moment they meet a real user. We optimize for alignment. Instead of outcomes, we optimize for clarity in meetings. Instead of clarity in experience, we optimize for being right instead of being useful. So what actually matters? Real user experience, direct interaction, short feedback loops. Everything else is a proxy. And proxies drift. They always drift. The longer you rely on them, the further you get from reality. So the discipline is not writing better acceptance criteria. It's not creating more detailed backlogs. It's not refining your process to perfection. The real discipline is this: return to reality faster, test sooner, observe directly, learn from what actually happens, and then adapt. That takes courage, because sometimes reality contradicts your plan. Sometimes it proves you wrong. Sometimes it shows that the thing you were confident in doesn't work at all. But that is where progress comes from, not from protecting your ideas, from testing them, not from defending your assumptions, from challenging them. A fearless practitioner understands this. They don't reject process. They just don't worship it. They use it when it helps. They discard it when it doesn't. And they always come back to reality, because in the end, it doesn't matter how
put
good
together with
something looks
enormous
on paper.
enthusiasm,
It doesn't matter how
designed for other
it's estimated.
purposes.
It doesn't
It's not a
meet the
masterpiece,
criteria.
not even a
It
minor
only
one,
matters
and it's not
what
a
happens
stunt.
when someone tries to use
We
it.
think it's worth broadcasting as a perfectly serious first attempt to find out whether we can convey a new kind of emotional and intellectual experience by means of what we call radiophonic effects.